On the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz comes an unprecedented exhibition about one of history's darkest moments. Auschwitz, not long ago, not far away, features more than 500 original objects, first-hand accounts, and survivor testimonies that tell the powerful story of the Auschwitz concentration camp, its history and legacy, and the underlying conditions that allowed the Holocaust to happen. On now exclusively at ROM. Tickets at rom.ca.
Jewish food. Is it always kosher? Should the existence of gourmet kishka disturb you? And of course, can't forget Elmo and Grok this week. Is antisemitism artificial, intelligent, both, neither? I'm Avi Finegold, and to answer these questions, I'm joined as always by Yedida Eisenstat and Matthew Leibl. Together, we are not in heaven. Matthew, Yedida, how's it going?
Nice to see you, Avi. How you doing? Yeah, great. You?
Doing good. There's we mentioned it briefly last week. The new CJN magazine Scribe Quarterly has a food issue. And it was like, oh yeah, we should talk about food a little more often, because if you're at Shul and you're at Kiddush, like you're a Jewish food person.
Food is huge.
Whether you like it, food is huge. Why is food huge for you?
I've even taught about this before. I've done I designed this course once where I think I had 6 parts and each one was connected to a Seinfeld episode that touched on a Jewish topic. And there's a Seinfeld episode where Frank Costanza, that's George's dad, helps Kramer out with this Jewish singles event by cooking all this Jewish food.
No, Jerry, look, I'm cooking all the food myself.
A tempting schmear of authentic Jewish delicacies.
But you like simmis?
This food is fantastic.
Have you tried the Hamantashen?
I can't get off the kishkas.
And so I use it as this launching kind of pad for a conversation about what's Jewish food. Is it necessarily kosher? Where does kosher? I find that food, it's connected to the holidays. It's connected to family. It's a way in to talking about Judaism for a lot of people who don't have any kind of religious background or a lot of knowledge whatsoever, because eating is easy. Like if someone makes you a knish, eating it is easy. And if you're always invited over to someone's house at the same time of year for the same event for 20 years and you eat the knishes, that becomes a big part of it. And so I've always been fascinated by food as an expression of Jewish culture.
Food, I think, like music, it like reminds us, it takes us back, it gives us, it like marks our memories, right? When somebody passes away, often we're like, oh, I'll never have their X, Y, or Z again. Or like, I remember when my grandparents moved into their retirement home after, I think, like 60 years of marriage, I said to my bubby, like, aren't you going to miss having your kitchen and like cooking for us, basically? She was like, no. No, I've been cooking for 60 years. No, I'm not going to miss it at all. But I miss her chocolate chip cookies and I miss her brisket. Right? Like that's, and those are my memories basically of having Shabbat dinner when we would get to their house on Sunday afternoon.
For sure. It seems to me, at least, that sitting with so many different families, writing eulogies over the years, so many matriarchs cooking, factors into major moments in their families. And these recipes are passed down like their lore. It's incredible. You
know as well as I do, as like that when we go talk to families for funerals to write a eulogy, everybody thinks that they are unique when they get to you and they say, Bubby's cooking was so special. Everybody thinks, everybody says that as in a way of like, you don't understand. Like there's other Bubbies who cooked and whatever. Bubby's cooking was so special.
But it was though.
Everybody says it totally is.
You're absolutely right. But I got to be careful here because I don't want anyone to hear this and be like, wait a second.
The piece that I point out is like, everybody thinks that they're unique about this. And I just want to disabuse them. No, everybody's Bubby was special. I mean, you do get the odd one that says, yeah, Bubby's cooking, as you said, it wasn't so special.
I like that. I like when a family's like, you know,
totally is honest about that.
There just wasn't a lot of cooking in there.
And there's a lot of also like scholarly work about food, like feasting and fasting and food and ritualization and memory. And yeah, food is huge, which is why I think it's interesting at like Jews in the like foodie space now. And I'm sure Avi can speak to this also, that like they're taking the traditional and they're like adding a like contemporary twist that like isn't authentic to the homeland, but like, you know, makes people want to eat it now.
Yeah, going on the theme of the elevated nature of food, I think that, like, to me, this started back when Zahav was a thing. I don't know if you remember, it still is this restaurant in Philadelphia that isn't kosher, but is very Israeli and won all sorts of big awards for like best restaurant, Michael Solomonov. And he was basically saying, look, I am doing very Jewish food. I'm doing all the classics, but I'm doing them my way. They're not necessarily kosher. I'm not looking for certification. I'm open on Shabbat, and that's that. And a lot of Jewish foods have started getting in through this lens. Journalist Michael Kaminer wrote about this in the CJN this week, about all of these Jewish foodies that are doing this elevated Jewish cuisine. And I don't eat there because the vast majority of these places are not kosher. But I'm always like of two minds in there, of like, on the one hand, it's kind of cool to see it like elevated, but in the back of my mind always, there's this notion from like Tyler Cowen, who's a big economist, and he's written a lot of books. There's a famous book that he wrote called An Economist Gets Lunch, where he talks about like the maximal impact you get, the way to like maximize your impact from your food dollars and get the best. Because he likes food also. He says, don't go eat like Uzbek food at like a fancy Uzbek or Russian or whatever restaurant. Go to a strip mall, right, in the neighborhood where all those people actually live, and eat the food there. Right? Like Somali food at a strip mall in a neighborhood that is packed with Somalis is going to be the best Somali food you'll ever have, because you have to, like, you have a much higher audience of like people who know this food. I'm saying that like sometimes the best kosher food, the best Jewish food,
go to Bathurst and Lawrence, is
go to like Marquis. Well, Marquis, Alav Shalom, Zecher Tzarak Levracha, whatever. But like the place where you have to convince the people who eat this stuff all the time that it's worth paying for, right? Like that's the place to go eat. And all of the frou-frou like trappings of elevated kosher cuisine is just to take a pastrami sandwich and be able to charge $45 for it because you did something special with it.
I walked by my best friend in Toronto. He lives right near that place, Linny's. There's this place on Ossington, Linny's, that's like kind of like what we're talking about.
Yeah, totally. It's in the article.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it looks really cool, but there's no pastrami sandwich out there that's $45. Like that's
I'm sure somebody is charging $45 for a pastrami.
I'm sure. I think they are. I can't. I have a lot of trouble crossing the door, Jewish food or not. Like that's a little wild for me. Like let's go.
So speaking of those kinds of restaurants, there was a wild story. I don't know if you guys saw this in JTA this week about this rabbi's ruling about Cholent not on Shabbos. Now I don't know if I could take a step back and. Cholent, I'm not going to get into explaining what Cholent is, but there's this thing.
Well, can't you just give a quick one line about like what Cholent is? Because you need to know that
Cholent. Everybody, if you don't know what Cholent is, you should
Winnipeg,
be listening
Cholent
to
is not a thing. In Winnipeg,
I'm kidding. Cholent, go ahead.
Winnipeg. I'm just saying. I moved to Halifax and learned about Cholent. When Winnipeg, where there's a robust community, there's no Cholent.
I just had my exam about this, right? So food needs to be either like totally uncooked or basically edible when Shabbat starts. So in order to have hot food on Shabbat day, you could put this in like as Shabbat was starting, and it would cook and it would be ready and delicious for you for lunch the next day. And it's usually like some combination of vegetables and a grain, and usually meat or kishka. People have all different variations of fun stuff. It like is a point of pride of like how good your cholent is, and like every week it turns out differently. Oh, beans are in there too. Anyway, so what?
It's a stew, right?
It's a stew. It's a slow cooked hot stew to eat on Shabbat. And a tradition has arisen that people now eat it on Thursday. And so, like, if this is special for Shabbat, can you eat it on Thursday night?
Yeah, so it started as this thing in yeshivas where you would be learning till late on Thursday night, and sort of a midnight snack reward for like staying late Thursday night in yeshiva. They'd pull out some cholent that they had been cooking since Wednesday already, and then that bled into people in the community knowing that like Thursday night cholent is a thing. There's a guy in Montreal that I know that for a long time was selling like. Had his garage open on Thursday night, and all he was selling was cholent and kugel. And like you can get a bowl of cholent and a kugel for like $4.
Delicious.
And it was like a thing. And if you've ever watched Shtisel,
I was going to say this.
The restaurant that they're in is that kind of like cholent and kugel sort of restaurant. Now, this rabbi goes and now makes this ruling that says that cholent is special for Shabbos and you're not allowed to eat it outside of Shabbos. and it causes everybody to like go nuts, or at least to write an article about this, for somebody to point out how this is. And it got me thinking, like, is there...
Why would he do that? Why would he do that? He
said, like, Cholent is special for Shabbos. That's his, like, way of like separating the... I don't have the exact ruling in front of me, but that was his, way of saying it. So the first thing I want to ask was, like, does any of this actually resonate with you? Like, in what ways is the ruling of like certain things remain for Shabbat actually correct?
To me, it feels like in my family, my Friday night tradition was so unbelievably powerful. I have one younger sister. My parents used to kind of rush home from work. We used to drive back north and go to my Bob and Zetas every Friday without fail. We wouldn't really accept invitations to go to other stuff. Like Friday night dinner was very sacred. This to me feels like someone in my family saying, we can't go to my Bob and Zetas on Tuesday. I'm only allowed to go there on Friday. To me, there are a million different ways to elevate Shabbat. I don't think that eating your cholent on Thursday night and then again eating it as part of your Shabbat routine compromises either. I don't get it.
Is there something that you keep specifically for Shabbos?
I mostly do a ton of cooking on Friday and eat Shabbos leftovers all week because that's what I have the bandwidth for. So
sure, no, but I'm saying, is there something...
Then.
Like, I'm thinking about, like, nobody sits around a table and sings Zmirot on a Tuesday
Correct.
night. That would not make sense. It would take away from the idea of Zmirot if you didn't sing them on Shabbat. So I guess that's where he's coming from. I agree with both of you that, like, yes, it's preposterous. There's a difference between Cholent on Shabbat and Cholent on a Thursday, and it's fine. They're their own thing.
I think that part of what we're getting at is that there are certain things we do at certain times, right? Blintzes and cheesecake and ice cream and whatever are for Shavuot. And you eat apples and honey on Rosh Hashanah, but like you can eat apples and honey like other times during the year. My kids for sure do. They like it. I want them to eat apples. So I think it's also a question about like whether or not we allow ourselves to do these other things at other times. And we do. We can have apples and honey for like through the end of Sukkot, and it's the season. And I think that it's perfectly fine to have Cholent on Thursday night after late night learning, and like that is Shabbos bleed, but like it's still ritualizing and it's still with the food. And I also think that it is a function of sort of changing attitudes towards Ashkenazi food, right? I think probably like, 15, 20 years ago, we were like, there's nothing special about this. This is the food of our culture. And like now we're coming around and like, oh, we're, Eastern European Jewish food is part of a foodie culture, right? I think it's really interesting that there's a market in the foodie scenes in Toronto and Montreal for not kosher, elevated Eastern European food, right? Like it's interesting to me that people want to come and are going to spend money on this.
Well, yeah, I don't know. There's enough people that are Ashkenazi but don't keep kosher. And that, like, right away you have that built-in market. And then now you have the opportunity to introduce this as yet another cuisine to a community of people that like to eat out and that are always looking for new and different experiences.
But the business model has to rely on all the people who are also eating Korean and Thai and Chinese and French,
exactly.
Right? It's part of this like larger multicultural foodie matrix in these like major multicultural cities.
Yeah, totally. So, but back to the Cholent, I'll tell you where I have a hard time with this. So I heard about this at a school here in Chicago, and I've heard that other schools do this as well, and it really rubbed me the wrong way that they have tefillah every morning. It's a Jewish day school, elementary, and Friday mornings their tefillah is Kabbalat Shabbat, and Monday mornings they start tefillah with Havdalah.
A lot of places do this, yes.
Yeah, and while technically it's correct, that feels so weird to me because you're basically saying you guys aren't going to get this at home, so let's do this in school.
Well,
that's the vibe that I get from that. It makes me depressed, and that's where I want to say leave certain Shabbat things for Shabbat, and if you don't get them on Shabbat, well, either start doing them or tough luck on you.
I don't know how it's a bad thing, though. I feel like it's all part of elevating the Shabbat experience. It's giving them the tools. If they're not getting it at home, but they go to a Jewish school or a Hebrew school, and they get these melodies and they get this kind of flavor, they get this sense, at least they're getting some kind of Shabbat. Isn't some kind of Shabbat?
I think there's
better in
ways
that
of giving
situation?
people some kind of Shabbat without doing a ritualized prayer that belongs in Shul on Friday night, and to say that's special. We love it. If you want it, go to Shul Friday night. And if you don't, like, here, we'll sing some songs about Shabbat. We'll do Shabbat Shiro and like make it happen like that.
Interesting.
Havdalah takes 2 minutes to learn, and you can have it transliterated. And if you think it's a great ritual, do it at home Saturday night.
So the end of the Cholent debacle, or you guys can give it like a better episode name,
I like
was
that.
basically like a partial retraction, I think, by this like very senior rabbi's son or grandson, where it basically is like, I didn't mean for this to be a universal ruling. The media got a hold of it and went crazy. And, you know, everybody should consult their local Orthodox rabbi or Rosh Yeshiva about their Thursday night Cholent policy. So with that, rabbis, I think that like everybody can make their own local policy. Avi does not want Cholent on Thursday night.
I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it as like post midnight, as like a taste of the cholent that's already cooking.
Shal Shabbat.
Yeah, a little bit of
Shabbos.
that. That works for me.
On the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz comes an unprecedented exhibition about one of history's darkest moments. Auschwitz, not long ago, not far away, features more than 500 original objects, first-hand accounts, and survivor testimonies that tell the powerful story of the Auschwitz concentration camp, its history and legacy, and the underlying conditions that allowed the Holocaust to happen. On now exclusively at ROM. Tickets at rom.ca.
Let's move on to a more serious topic. Last week, Elon Musk announced a major upgrade to Grok. I'm sure you guys have all heard about what's been going on with it. What people discovered soon after this upgrade was that it started spouting all sorts of wild anti-Semitic comments. It calling itself the Mecha Hitler. It's making all sorts of statements. They were only goaded further by like the extreme right wing, who were like, yes, this is great. We love Grok. These posts have been deleted. It's been announced that they have updated the code further to prevent this from happening. But Jewish pundits are going to pundit, and they have seized the moment and pointed out with renewed fervor the dangers of AI when it comes to anti-Semitism. So let's start with what the critics of Grok and Musk have gotten right about like this incident. What actually should be concerning to us about what happened here?
A lot. How easily this ostensibly smart thing was led astray, but also like the total mainstreaming and amplification of anti-Semitism, I think, is my biggest concern. This podcast today motivated me to go back to, I think, an excellent essay written by Deborah Lipstadt in the 90s, the introduction to her book, Denying the Holocaust. And she sort of, I think, prophetically pointed out that, you know, computers allow for just like flooding the internet with total disinformation, not just about Jews and anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial. And we know that. And we also are seeing that all of these different AIs don't have the means of filtering the actual like knowledge and truth from the garbage, and the internet is full of garbage. And this is the natural consequence of that. And I am very worried about it.
It feels like this Zachor et Amalek thing for me. This is what I always keep coming back to, right? So for anybody who's not like super biblical, right? There's this part in Deuteronomy, and we read it every year on the Shabbat right before Purim, because Haman was supposed to be a descendant of Amalek, and Amalek are the greatest enemy of the Jewish people who attacked them after they left Egypt, but they attacked from the back. They fought dirty. It was really terrible. And the whole idea is that in every generation, Amalek will rise up to destroy the Jewish people. And I just kind of always understood that there was this built-in thing in our DNA from as ancient as you get, thousands of years, that there will always be this looming threat. And not like a threat that most other cultures can relate to, a threat bent on annihilation. And our problem is that Amalek doesn't exist in the sense that, hey, that's Amalek. It's this metaphor, right? Like it stands for whatever is the worst threat against the Jewish people in a time. And we've been around for so long that the worst threat has morphed and changed. And now AI is part of this worst threat. And I've lived my life in such a comfortable way where I could always be so public about being Jewish. I talk about being on the radio for all that time and never, ever came back on me. So I've never lived it, but I see all these stories. I see it going up. I see the rise in the fear, and it just feels like this is not new. This is what that is all about for me, is that like the Jews have always known in every corner of the world, there has always been this area of not to live in fear, but to live on guard. I don't see it as living in fear, but I see it as this idea that there's like self-preservation needs to be part of it. There is just this bizarro, inexplicable hate on for our people that will always manifest in one way or another, given enough time. It's not new.
Yeah, I echo the sentiment that you have about like not feeling it, especially at the times when it was not a big deal. When Deborah Lipstadt was writing those things, anti-Semitism was still very, very, very fringy. For most people, it wasn't a concern. It was not like top of mind. And now it has become top of mind. I still don't feel a lot of the day-to-day anti-Semitism, but I get that it is out there in a certain way for people to like have to deal with, especially on campus, but not far from exclusively on campus. The thing I have a harder time with is pointing to specifically AI, because AI is just a tool like anything else. And we all use AI in different ways, and there is going to be many more AIs that are going to proliferate, and we will eventually figure out which tools are worth using and which ones are not. When the web came out, people were freaking out. There's a website with anti-Semitism, therefore the internet is bad. And nobody believes that anymore, because for decades we have figured out how to use the internet, well, until recently, without having to worry about anti-Semitism, knowing that it's there, knowing that it needs to get shut down by people. Like there's a process for dealing with anti-Semitism on the internet when it's on a website.
And process is gone.
The process is go ahead. No, please. Tell me more.
The guardrails are totally off.
On the web, you mean, or like on AI?
On Facebook now, if you report an anti-Semitism post, it goes through some AI, and then the AI is the arbiter of whether or not something is anti-Semitic. And because the AI doesn't see it as anti-Semitic, it's not, and it gets to stay on the internet. We're seeing the proliferation of bots, and the problem. So Avi, 100%, I agree. AI should only ever be used as a tool and always under human supervision. But I think that we're not seeing that with students right now, right? We're all reading the catastrophizing from the university professors that their students are just submitting AI written work. And I think there's some truth in that. And the problem is that we go to our AIs and we ask it a question and we expect that the answer that we're going to get back is correct. So if the AI offers any of us or somebody uncritically, right, or somebody who isn't going to examine the answer, and they give it an authoritative answer that's full of anti-Semitic garbage, then that now is the person's authority on whatever that question is. And that's terrifying.
So, I'm glad you're bringing all of this up, because I want to address it from this quote that I pulled out from an article that David Zvi wrote this week about this incident. And he says, if Nick Fuentes says something anti-Semitic, you can chalk it up to him being an anti-Semite. If you read it on Gab or 4chan, the very platform gives some indication of its lack of worth. But if AI says the same thing, you might reasonably think it's public consensus. We joke when AI overuses M-dashes or the word delve. What if its tendencies end up being harder to spot and more dangerous? So this really fits into exactly what you're saying. And the part that I have a hard time with is that there is no such thing as one AI, right? That's assuming, for example, that the World Wide Web is all the same. Hold on. And that we know the same way that we have figured out even early on that Wikipedia wasn't something to be trusted until it became something to be trusted. And that just because it was on the web didn't mean that you had to trust it. We are at the point now where, just like websites and Photoshop and whatever in the late 90s, gets to the point where you say, well, just because it's there doesn't mean I automatically believe it. And you always use the AI with your own common sense to be able to figure it out. And very soon after, it took days for people to realize that if Grok says something and it's about anti-Semitism, you might very well have to discount it. And you say, well, that comes from Grok. The same way that we say it comes from 4chan. We know that there's hallucinations. We know that we have to always verify these types of things. And we know that different platforms do different things.
You're making an assumption. So kids especially COVID kids. And also because we've, as a North American society, unevenly invested in our children's education in the next generation there. I'll say it nicely. I don't know that. And I'd love to be wrong. And, this is me saying, oh, the next generation, they're not all right, whatever. I am not sold that all the 20 somethings today are going to expose and look deeper and look under a microscope and pull on the threads and check the footnotes of the answers that they're getting from AI. Using AI as a tool, it's a convenience, right? It gives you the easy answer to your question. And it's good as a starter research tool. I mean, I used AI a little bit as a chavruta to read Rishonim when they're really hard, and it does a great job. But sometimes it's wrong. And I'll say, well, I think that you're misunderstanding this term. Could it mean something else? And we'll have a lovely back and forth. It's a great tool, but it's only helping me get where I want to go because I'm challenging it and telling it when I think it's wrong, right? And that's only happening because I'm using it as a tool and using it critically. And I 100% agree that I would love to see that that's how society is going to use this tool. And I'd love for you to be right that that's what's going to happen here. I'm not sold.
I kind of dig that answer too, Yedida. I was going to say, it's not even just kids. To me, AI represents this almost kind of instead of calling it common sense, it's just like this available lowest common denominator information. Like if you don't work very hard to find info on something, if you're very lazy about it, what do you have easy access to? Like when Avi makes such a great point about the internet and how we had to figure out where was a good space, where was not a good space. People aren't going to go check out a site that they don't trust or a site that says like death to Jews or something like that. But AI is bringing all this other stuff so you don't search for it. You don't know where it's coming from, where it's compiling. It's giving quicker access to the dark parts of the internet, bringing it forward and not really filtering it. I'm not worried about the people who are out there who I believe make up the majority of the humans on Earth who do give things a second thought. I'm worried about this baseline that is being corrupted, right? Because the baseline now is being infiltrated by all this very, very dangerous information because of the way AI collects everything in a second, right? And it doesn't discriminate. Like the AI doesn't know this site can't be trusted. This is a neo-Nazis website versus this is it's on the internet. So it just grabs it. Doesn't seem to me to be programmed or filtered to, spit out the most reliable stuff all the time, just the stuff it gets.
Look, I think you're right about people who are, for lack of a better term, gullible or just willing to absorb anything as it comes out. And if that's the 20-somethings, that's fine. If that's somebody else, that's fine. Like, I'm not going to get into that. And we still haven't figured out how to use social media properly. And the problem is that we've now stacked one thing on top of another, and that's its own conversation. But a lot of the other AIs were pretty right when they pointed out that Trump had a pretty low score in terms of anti-Semitism. And all of a sudden the right wing is like, oh, no, that can't be. It's not fair. Our Trump is perfect. I'm like, they did a good job with that. And it wasn't Grok, but it was other AIs. And we're starting to figure out what is it that we can do and how we can use it in this way. So our responsibility as thinkers, as people that are presenting this stuff to society, shouldn't be shut down AI because anti-Semitism is going to be proliferating. It's let's recognize how to use AI and let's teach people what it is and what it isn't, and that anything that comes from an AI, you have to stop and ask yourself, what's going on here? It is pulling from everything, but the good AIs are the ones that are starting to figure out and are being tweaked to sort of say, let's be a little more selective about how we do things and recognize that these things are not, they're discountable, right, in terms of the things that we learn from and not the other things. And that's going to come with time.
I'm worried that everything is accelerating, right? We know that about technology, that like it's slow and then it's a little faster and then it's like the speed of light fast. And as you pointed out, like social media has like ruined society, right? It's made us all lonely and retreat to our echo chambers, and we only have anything to do with people who think like we do. And you just pointed out, right, the like test of the AIs for the Trump anti-Semitism score was interesting, number one, because the argument against that is like, well, Trump supports Israel, so he can't be an anti-Semite. But also, I'm worried that, right, what I think that you've hinted to is that, right, the right wing and the left wing could choose different AIs, and then their echo chambers become even like more different universes of realities, and that their realities are just going to like move in even further separate directions. And it's going to be, society is going to be torn apart, and there's not going to be any overlap or space for conversation, even more than there is right now. And that is very scary to me.
Yeah, I think you are right. And that's our responsibility, to be vigilant and to figure out. I don't like the term guardrails, but I like the term of how to be responsible, right? Every era has had its technology that has made it the threatening thing to all of humanity and all of society, right? From the Luddites and the Industrial Revolution to the printing press and the availability of wisdom and information to the masses, to, all the pill, right? All of this stuff. It's always, this is the worst thing that's going to happen to society. This is the worst thing that's going to happen to society. And we always figure out a way to mostly get it right. And I think that that's our job as, as rabbis, as public people, as people that are thinking, to say, what does it mean to get it right when it comes to AI? Because we sort of missed the boat on social media, and we got to it too late.
Right.
We're getting at it at a certain point now. Let's figure this out.
So I don't think we've gotten social media right. I think we're going to have a whole generation dealing with the fallout of that. So that's also really scary.
Who's that on? Who do you think blew that?
I think we were asleep at the wheel. That's my...
It's really hard to anticipate the outcomes of new technologies.
No, but like, who's the we? Who do you?
I'm saying that I think that we as a society were asleep at the wheel when social media just became like almost like overnight from this like, a way for Bubby to like see her grandchildren's pictures on their Facebook feed to being incredibly pernicious. Yeah. And there was a few people at the top who saw what was going on, were able to monetize it, and realize that the way to monetize it is to take the worst aspects of it and make it into the worst possible thing. And there were a few people calling it out, but we were, for the most part, as a society, asleep and not into seeing that this was actually a real deal. And what's good about this article and these articles about this anti-Semitism is not specifically, because I do reject it, and we've discussed this, the idea that like, this is particularly bad for anti-Semitism, but it's pointing out that it's particularly bad for society if it's not taken care of properly, and not to eliminate it, but just to say we have to be mindful. What does that mean? How do we look at that?
I guess what's interesting to me about this is that I have never had Facebook. I had Twitter only. I know it's called X now. I had Twitter only when I was a radio host on TSN, and the second I retired from that in September 2016, I got rid of that. I've never had TikTok. I've never had Instagram. I have never. So I actually do understand and believe, Avi, the evil of the people running some of these companies. But I also kind of want to say my life is fine. Just get rid of it. Like, where does it become on the users too? A little bit here. I mean, Facebook is a dangerous place. Get off Facebook. Show me what it does for you, regardless of your age. Like that was my problem. I went to journalism school in 2007, 2008. Twitter was barely a thing. I'm not that old. 2007, 2008 is not that long ago. A few years later, it was on the radio. Twitter was the number one thing when you talk about the change overnight. I'm giving, like, those are the years. 2008, 2009, 2010, boom, game over. That's 15 years ago now. And while I do understand that these companies, again, are being run in very dishonest, illegitimate ways, Yedida's story about the meme that's clearly anti-Semitic that somehow gets ruled that it's not anti-Semitic by Facebook, that's terrifying. But stop using Facebook, right?
Yeah, but there was a form of Facebook that wasn't terrible, and then people and algorithms and the people at the top, who, by the way, are a lot of the same people who are running the AI models, are doing terrible things with it. Like, why do we trust the people who've ruined society with their social media to now be the same people designing the AIs? Like, I think we should be scratching our heads about that. But I wanted to say also that I think there's actually a lot of overlap between our conversation last week and this week with respect to like the democratization of knowledge and the end of expertise. So elitism is a bad word, so I don't want to be an elitist here, but like, I think that what we're seeing now, and like, this will also resonate and as part of the social media conversation and how we share information, that like, right, that the end of science and the end of vaccinations is part of this same democratization and this ecosystem of like everybody having their own facts and everything is a matter of dispute and everything is a matter of perspective, which is like the same thing that Deborah Lipstadt points to, right? Like when we let Holocaust deniers have a platform, we're giving legitimacy to their point of view. When we let people who like question hard science have a platform, we are legitimizing that point of view. And all of this,
Yes.
right? The end of truth and the end of objective facts is to all of our own detriments. And there are people who are experts and they know things and we should listen to them.
I don't disagree with the vast majority of what you're saying. The only thing that I want to add on to that is the fact that, at least the way that I see it, anti-Semitism is a small piece of that larger puzzle.
Agree, but it is a canary in the coal mine, right? Like QAnon. Do you guys remember QAnon? I haven't thought about them until this morning. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
I know,
Right?
They're the
yes.
So
conspiracy
like
theorists
they're right, but
wacko.
that's
Yeah.
everybody do your own research, right? That's the end of expertise. It's like I am not an AIDS researcher. I will never be an AIDS researcher. So I should not say things about the science of AIDS, right? Like I should listen to the experts. And so
Just because you read a book or read one article, or like that's so it's empowering people to do
Right,
this
like, I'm
now.
not
Is they think they read one thing and they know.
right, like there was yes, right. There was like a brilliant, this is the example that's coming to mind. There was like an amazing history of cancer that was written. I remember at the end of my doctorate.
Oh, Siddhartha
Yes,
Mukherjee.
yes, that's the book, right?
love that
I
book.
really, really wanted to read a novel,
Wow.
but I could not get my brain into a novel. So I ended
Emperor
up,
of all maladies.
yes, I ended up reading The Emperor of All Maladies, which is like this incredible narrative history written for not science people about the history of cancer. It's an amazing book and it's an amazing history of cancer. I am not an oncologist. Right? I'm never going to be an oncologist just because I read The Emperor of All
Never
Maladies.
say never.
Pardon?
Never
I can
say
pretty
never.
much say never. But my point is just that like this democratization of knowledge and conspiracy theories and perspectives and everything is a matter of perspective and go do your own research is all wrapped up in like we could say like media literacy and the ability to sort through the garbage. And what we're seeing is that the AIs are not good at that yet, and it should come with a warning label.
A lot of people are still not good at that.
Right.
Either.
And so but that's my
Things need to
point.
come
We're
with a
making
warning
it
label.
worse.
Yeah.
We're making it worse, right? Because
That's exactly right. You're
Yeah.
making it worse. Like you said it earlier, we're accelerating it, we're heating it up, we're speeding it up. Everything is moving so fast. And the people who are already behind are getting caught farther behind. And the rest, everyone is, it seems. Yeah.
and I'm worried about the kids,
Neither.
Avi. I'm worried about the kids.
I believe you. I believe
How
you.
can
The
you not be worried about the kids?
To me, and I want to close with these couple of examples where people just assume that the AI does things. And there was a meme that came out this week about the I don't know if you saw this. It was a picture of some like sliced brisket, but it was done in a style like it was sliced to look
An
like
AI
the
definitely
typical.
made that.
Oh, hold on.
Sorry.
Yeah. A hooked, like, Jew hook nose or whatever. And it was sliced. And then underneath it said, put this brisket back in the oven. And it caused a furor. And then the other piece was that Elmo's Twitter was hacked. Elmo's X was hacked and started spouting a lot of, again, anti-Semitic stuff. And people, oh, look, this was done with AI. This was done with AI. The AI didn't do any of this, right? A person had to go and come up with that line about the brisket, and then a person had to go and feed a prompt to the AI, right? The AI didn't do this unprompted, and a person had to feed into the AI the prompt, give me a picture of this individual, but made out of sliced brisket, and refined it and refined it and refined it, and then it was ready for public consumption, and then put it out there. This is not an AI just deciding I'm going to take over the world and the Jews are bad. We are, going to start flooding the zone with these memes and making Jews be perceived to be the most evil people in the world. That's not how this works. Elmo was hacked by a person, right? In fact, the very person that I noticed was when Archie Gottesman and Jubalong goes and posts the response about it, and Elmo's at the Kotel, that was done with AI. Right? Was that not done with AI? So you're using it in both directions, but when they do it, it's so bad, we're allowed to do it because we're doing it for good. So let's remember that It still is in our hands. It is still a tool that people use to get their ideas out there, and it's working a lot faster. And I agree with all of those things, but just let's please remember that it's humans behind all of this so far.
Yes,
Yep,
but some
I
of
agree.
those humans have it out for people.
Yes.
So like it's not okay. Like,
I'm
it's not
awake.
okay because we're
It's not
both
okay.
using
I'm
it.
not saying it's okay. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm just giving us the direction that we should be
I just
moving in
I
that
do
direction.
I am with Avi or anyone who kind of wants to pump the brakes on hysteria. I do feel like we live in this time where it feels like every kind of reaction to every situation is some next new level of hysteria. And I'm all for pumping the brakes and trying to have a sober first thought, really. Stay off social media, kids.
We would, speaking of social media, well, not email. We really would love to hear what you think about this. If you ever have any thoughts about any of this content, about this specific idea or any of the stuff we've discussed, we at the CJN welcome letters to the editor. Please do send us one at thecjn.ca/submissions or email us at heaven@thecjn.ca. Please give us your thoughts. We'd love to hear what you're thinking about.
That was a really good segue.
And with that, textual healing.
Textual healing. It's time for some textual healing.
Let's get biblical. Tell me a parsha, and we'll make it physical. Textual healing. It's time for some textual healing.
Parshat Pinchas this week. There's a lot of different pieces in there. Who wants to start us off?
I feel like I've been a little intense. So here's a little bit of lighter Torah, less intense Torah. Amidst everything else in this week's Parsha, there's a lot of dividing up the land amongst the different tribes. And it gets a little repetitious around the end of chapter 26. But one of the things that it says is that the land should be divided up sort of by proportion. So a larger tribe will get more land and a smaller tribe will get less land.
This is Canadian history, rep by pop.
Don't test me on Canadian history.
Yeah, she says Z now. She's
I'm a historian of other
she's full
things.
on down there.
Anyway, so it says though that al pi hagoral techalek nachalato, that it's sort of like a normal translation would be according to the lot, its inheritance, right? So the number of people and proportion of land. So Rashi there says that al-pi means that like after the leader of the tribe would like stick his hand in one hat for his tribe and then stick his hand in another hat for a particular territory, that's how the land was apportioned and that's how they knew that it was God's will. But also that the actual territory would open up its mouth and say, hey, you're coming to me. And so the territory, right, the land itself spoke up because it's like a play on al-pi, P and Peh, and so the land had a say also in who came to live in it.
Love it. What do you got for us, Matthew?
So, at the very beginning of the parsha, Pinchas, for whom the parsha is named, his name is written in a kind of cool way. You guys know this story, right? Where the yud in his name is made smaller. You know about this? Mm-hmm. Right. So people. I'm always fascinated by these things, right? Because I was always reading out of the Torah. So I always kind of like the visual aspect of the Torah. Plus, not a lot of people really check it out. So there's a whole bunch of letters in the Torah that are made bigger for reasons and made smaller for reasons. Very good example where the Shema is. The Ayin at the end of Shin Mem Ayin is giant. And then at the very end, Echad, the Dalet is huge. So like these are like visual moments in the Torah, right? So Pinchas has one of these visual moments. So Pinchas at the very end of last week's Parsha, there's this Israelite guy and a non-Israelite woman, a Midianite woman, and they're together in the tent, and he goes in there and he stabs them at the same time like a kebab through them. Avi was saying somebody was mentioning in shul that it was like a kebab.
I will not.
It's awful. It's awful.
Yes.
I think it's one of the top 5 most gruesome moments in the entire Torah, actually. I think it's really, truly terrible. And then there's a break. Then the parsha cuts off there in the middle of the chapter. Very interesting. And the new still the same chapter, and the new parsha begins, and we get the aftermath. We find out who they were. We get the aftermath. And Pinchas gets rewarded for his zealotry, for his passion, and the line of the Kohanim, because he's the grandson of Aaron. He's the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron. I have that right? And so he's supposed to be continuing the line of the priesthood, the Kohanim. And God basically says, yep, you're still my guy, because his attack ended a plague and all this stuff. But so he kind of gets this heroic treatment in spite of this really terrible, gruesome, horrible, murderous thing he does. And I always thought there was this great, I think it's a midrash, that the yud in his name is written tiny. Because in spite of what happened here, the spirituality within him, the godness represented by the letter yud, was diminished as a result. So that even though he came out on top, the sacrifice built right into his name. And I think anyone who's been in a situation where they had to do something, and even if it might have been the right thing, there is a part of you that gets diminished as a result. And I always thought there was a really, really something special in their teaching. At the same time, the word shalom, the vav has a crack in it. Scribes actually write it with a crack in it because the peace they say that Pinchas created was not a permanent peace, because any peace achieved through violence cannot be a permanent peace. So kind of two really great typographical, calligraphical, I don't know what to call them, the way the Torah is written. Anyway, I think about that. Plus, it's my dad's bar mitzvah parsha, so shout out to him.
Very nice. Happy birthday to him. I am always struck by this tiny moment after this census, land apportioning bit, and all of the holidays, which make their big, they have little debuts in other places, but this is the place where they all come together and say, these are all the holidays that we do.
The holiday parade. It's like a
the
parade,
holiday
actually.
parade. Exactly.
Yeah.
And right in between there's this small moment where Moshe hands over the reins of leadership to Yehoshua. And it's this time I always think to pause and reflect yet again because of this is the fulcrum point on the leadership of Moshe versus the leadership of Yehoshua. I had a teacher once that pointed out that if you look at the book of Yehoshua, the amazing thing and the remarkable thing about Yehoshua and probably his leadership is that despite having sinned again and again and again as a nation in all of the books of the Torah, that there's a nation of Israel, the Israelites do not sin in the book of Yehoshua as a nation, right? That Yehoshua managed to keep everybody on track, right? The downside to that is that the book of Yehoshua is kind of boring, right? There's nothing really interesting that happens, right? The walls of Jericho, okay, that's something. But the highlights are much more subdued in the book of Joshua. And what I keep thinking about because of this moment is that Yehoshua had a mentor in Moshe, that he was always able to go and be there, and he was watching what leadership looked like for 40 years, whereas Moshe was all alone. He didn't have any mentors. He didn't have anybody to look up to. And his leadership is very much this singular vision. And there's something there that when you only have yourself to rely on for your ideas, sometimes you end up hitting the rocks. Sometimes the people end up rebelling. Sometimes this happens. Sometimes that happens. And that to me typifies in a large way the thinking about Yehoshua versus the thinking about Moshe. And that to me is the point of this parsha for when that happens.
I love that take. It reminds me of when Moshe has his only really human moment with his father-in-law, Yitro, right? We never ever he never gets that moment, Avi. You're right. He has a brother and a sister, and yet he never has anyone. We never see him talk to his wife. We never see him get any kind of check in with Moses, right? And Joshua had this I like that. I like your story too. It's interesting that you guys went to 3 different places. We went to 3 different places in the parsha. That was kind of cool.
I'm trying to move past the beginning. I feel like Avi was just teasing some of why he loves the Book of Numbers. So.
Oh, we'll get to it. We'll get to it soon enough.
Great.
Next week, the Book of Numbers is done, and we will take time because there's no real Dvar Torah about Matod Maseh. Let's be honest. There's nothing interesting to say about it.
I'm supposed to give the drasha in Shul Shabbos morning, so I have some ideas.
I will. Good for you. I can't wait to hear them, and we'll spend some time talking about that. Yeah. I'm saying next week we'll finally get to the why Avi thinks Bamidbar is the book to really go for.
I'm excited for that textual healing. That'll be good.
Well, stay tuned till next week. Thank you for listening to Not in Heaven. Our producer and editor is Zachary Kauffman. Michael Fraiman is the executive producer. To catch every episode, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you ever have thoughts about any of our content, the CJN welcomes letters to the editor. You can send one at thecjn.ca/submissions or email us at heaven@thecjn.ca with any of your thoughts. If you'd like to support our show, consider making a donation to the CJN at thecjn.ca/donate. It's time for textual healing.
I haven't listened to it yet. Is it really awesome? I haven't heard the...
It's kind of fun.
great.
Wasn't it made with AI?
It was. Let's not go there.
On the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz comes an unprecedented exhibition about one of history's darkest moments. Auschwitz, not long ago, not far away, features more than 500 original objects, first-hand accounts, and survivor testimonies that tell the powerful story of the Auschwitz concentration camp, its history and legacy, and the underlying conditions that allowed the Holocaust to happen. On now exclusively at ROM. Tickets at rom.ca.